Will the LA Kings go after Mitch Marner, the biggest free agent likely to be available this offseason? We'll discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. Also, one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night, a nightly podcast and YouTube show that wraps up the night in the NHL, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, the LA Kings have answered a couple of major questions going into this offseason. Who will their next GM be? Ken Holland? Will Jim Hiller remain as head coach? Yes. So what's next for the LA Kings? Well, there's the upcoming NHL draft here in Los Angeles on June the 27th and 28th. There was a bit of news involving the Kings and their first round draft pick this year. That's called a tease. We'll tell you about it later. And there is free agency, which will start on July 1st at noon Eastern time. This is when teams can start to negotiate and sign any unrestricted free agents. Just about every other Locked On NHL team show will likely be, or has likely done, a show talking about the possibility of their team signing the biggest free agent likely to be available this year, and that is Mitch Marner. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Should the LA Kings go after Mitch Marner? Well, maybe we don't even know who Mitch Marner is. I know there are different levels of Kings fans that listen to this show. Some of you absolutely know who he is. Some of you maybe only know the name. We'll give you a little bio on Mitch Marner. He's 28 years old. He's a right shot right winger, currently with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he's a pending UFA, unrestricted free agent. On July 1st, he can sign with any team. He is the biggest UFA that is likely going to be available. It's possible he could re-sign with the Maple Leafs between now and July 1st, but that's not expected to be the case. The team is not done well with him, and it seems like the Toronto Maple Leafs, after another postseason disappointment, is looking to change things up. So why is Mitch Marner likely to be so highly sought after? Well, he's a playmaking forward. He had a career-high 102 points this past season, 27 goals and 75 assists. He's one of 6 players to eclipse the 100-point mark this past season, joining Nikita Kucherov, Nathan MacKinnon, Leon Draisaitl, David Pastrnak, and Connor McDavid. Those are all elite NHL forwards. Marner finished third in the NHL in assists behind Kucherov and McKinnon. And not only is Marner highly skilled offensively, he's also a very responsible defensive player as well. He was a Selke Trophy finalist in 2023, the award that's given out to the best defensive forward in the NHL. Now, he has never won a major award. He's been a finalist, but he's never won. And he is not a player that has really elevated his team significantly as far as postseason success. 13 playoff games this postseason, 2 goals, 11 assists. Those are not bad numbers, but he just isn't much of an impact player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, or hasn't been in big games for them. And they were just eliminated in a game 7 in the second round of the playoffs, and he didn't do much in that game. Now, frankly, neither did a lot of his teammates, but if you're going to pay a guy that much money, maybe make him the highest paid player in the game, you would expect that kind of player to be that kind of player, a difference maker in the biggest games. Now, would Mitch Marner be a fit in Los Angeles? We all obviously probably think to Pierre-Luc Dubois the last time the Kings took a big swing at getting a player, and we were told the reason why that didn't work is that Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't ultimately a fit in LA. He then immediately went to Washington, where he seemed like he was a good fit there. And it would certainly seem like Marner would be a fit anywhere he goes. He's the type of player, certainly though the Kings could specifically need. We talked a lot about it going into the trade deadline. What do the Kings need? Right shot, right winger. that could help offensively and on the power play. Mitch Marner is a right shot, right winger who could help offensively and on the power play. Now, Pierre-Luc Dubois, again, didn't seem to be a fit regarding, this strengthening the center position for the LA Kings. But Pierre-Luc Dubois did come with some baggage to LA. It was his third team in 7 seasons. The previous 2 spots in Columbus and Winnipeg, there were issues there. But Mitch Marner hasn't had any issues really where he's gone. There was an incident early in his career with head coach Mike Babcock in Toronto, but that was a Babcock issue. That was not a Mitch Marner issue. The Mitch Marner issue is that, again, he has not elevated his game when it matters most. And look, you know what you're going to get, I think, with Mitch Marner. Pretty consistent playmaking forward. He's probably not going to get 100 points if he joins the LA Kings. He's not going to be playing with a guy like Austin Matthews. But what are the expectations for Mitch Marner if he were to come to LA? For me, he would be a upgrade at the forward position. His skills certainly say he's an elite type player. But again, is he the difference maker between the Kings being a cup contender or not? I would have to say I have a hard time saying that. Does he make your team better? Yes. But is he the piece that is the missing piece to winning a Stanley Cup? I don't know that I could say that based on what he's done in his career so far in the postseason. And if you certainly could argue, if you're going to make this guy the highest paid player in the NHL, if you're going to pay him $14 million a year for 7 years, even with the salary cap going up, that's a pretty big investment. Do you want to invest that much money in a guy who probably isn't that kind of elite? Again, the talent is there, but the performance in the big games has not been there to this point. So if you go after a Mitch Marner, that also probably means, not if you go after him, if you get him, if you sign a Mitch Marner, it probably means the Kings will not be able to re-sign defenseman Vladislav Gabberov. So you also have to weigh that. Sure, getting Mitch Marner is an upgrade to your forwards, but if it comes at the expense of losing one of your top defensive players, is that overall a net gain? And I think that's a very, very legitimate question. Now, does Mitch Marner want to come to LA? I have no idea. I have not read anything or heard anything in regards to where Mitch Marner might want to play next. And I think it's very smart of him not to tip his hand in any way. We want as many teams interested in you as possible if, in fact, he does reach free agency. Again, he could re-sign in Toronto, but to me, it doesn't feel like that's going to be the case. Seems like those two sides both are willing to part ways at this point. And for what it's worth, and probably not much, but I did a Google search and tried to find as many articles as I could from, major publications. What do they say about where some likely landing spots for Mitch Marner would be? Not one of them ever mentioned the LA Kings. I saw the Ducks as a possible landing spot. Anaheim has a ton of cap space. They could probably pay him anything he's looking for. I've seen Vegas mentioned as a possible landing spot, and God knows the Golden Knights are not afraid to be very aggressive. That's been their calling card since they've entered the league. And I have to say, as a Kings fan, it did bother me to see Anaheim and Vegas on these lists, but not LA. Now, Kings' new GM, Ken Holland, has he been the type of player in his past to go all in after a big, big name like Mitch Marner? I mean, look, he's been a GM for 27 years. Obviously, he's gone after and landed some pretty big names, but it seemed like in Detroit, he was always getting these veteran guys that were kind of on the back end of their careers, Hall of Famers like Chris Chelios, Luke Robitaille, Brett Hull, Dominic Hasek, and they did come in and help the Red Wings win Stanley Cups, but it's apples and oranges when compared to somebody like a Mitch Marner, a guy that's in his prime, is the number one free agent available. In Edmonton, Ken Holland did have one pretty big signing. That was Zach Hyman, and he came in and he scored a career high 54 goals, but he wasn't considered a superstar before he scored those goals. And frankly, he's kind of come back down to earth. He's not really considered a superstar, I don't think, at this point of his career, despite that amazing one season. So If Ken Holland wanted to make a big splash as Kings GM, certainly Mitch Marner would be a huge splash for him. Put him and the Kings, in the headlines for sure. The Kings ownership, if you watched or listened to the Ken Holland press conference, if you've heard what Luc Robitaille has said in the past, they claim Kings ownership is willing to pay the big bucks to improve the team. So from that standpoint, apparently the Kings have the green light to go after a guy like Mitch Marner. They're willing to pay what it's going to take to get a guy like Mitch Marner. But the message we've had from the Kings hasn't been about taking a big swing. It's been about tweaks. We heard it in the press conference for Ken Holland. Just a little tweak here, an improvement there, they feel can get the Kings to where they need to be. That doesn't send the message to me like they would be big game hunters this offseason. So what would I do if I was Ken Holland? I would absolutely go all in on Mitch Marner. Now, again, that doesn't mean they're going to get him. He still has to want to come here, but I would do everything I could to try and get him. Again, and that's coming from someone who doesn't believe Mitch Marner is ever going to be a Hart Trophy winner. He's never going to be a Connor McDavid. He's never going to be a Nathan McKinnon. He's never going to be a Nikita Kucherov. I don't think one of those types of guys that can be a difference maker in winning you a championship. But would he elevate the Kings? Would he make them better? Would he increase the talent level in their forward positions? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt about it. So again, I'm tired of being patient. And again, to me, it's a relatively safe, addition. It's not like Pierre-Luc Dubois, who had the baggage and who had a reputation. Mitch Marner doesn't have that. His reputation is that he comes up small in big games, and that's not nothing. That's something. But as far as him being a malcontent or a guy who could be a cancer in the locker room, I have not gotten that kind of vibe about Mitch Marner at all. Luc Robitaille and Ken Holland talked about LA. They talked about the Lakers and the Dodgers. They talked about this being a market that demands that you be competitive and that you make big splashes. Certainly Mitch Marner would be that type of a guy. So I would love to see the Kings go after him. I'd love to see the Kings, again, get those kind of headlines as being a team that is going to go for it and make big moves. And I do think he would improve the LA Kings, certainly as far as, having more dangerous weapons to go up against the likes of a Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, which is likely going to be the case for years to come. Now, do I think the Kings will do that? Do I think the Kings will ultimately get Mitch Marner? And again, it may be out of the Kings' hands. He may not want to come here for all we know. But I would love to see the Kings go all in and go after him. I would love to see that. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't, but I would love to see it. I would do it if I was the Kings general manager, although I'm not, and I never will be. And it's probably a good thing that that's not the case. Up next, we're going to put a key player for the LA Kings in the spotlight and look at defenseman Vladislav Gabberov. That is next. You're on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check out your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, get goals, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, time for another Kings player in the spotlight. We've done a couple of these so far with Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. And today we're going to look at a player that we briefly mentioned earlier, and that is defenseman Vladislav Gabberov. We're going to look at the past season for him and what his future is likely for the LA Kings. Now, Gabberov just wrapped up his second full season in LA after being acquired before the trade deadline from the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2023. He's played 179 games for the Kings as a defensive defenseman, and has chipped in with 14 goals and 62 points. While Gabberov has been solid and reliable no matter where he's played, the Kings really had to lean on him this season as he was forced to play on the right side, his offside, following a preseason injury to Drew Doughty. And Gabberov filled in admirably for Drew Doughty and was one of the Kings' most valuable players last season. He played in all 82 games, was solid regardless of where he was asked to play. He's a good skater, not afraid to be physical, has good instincts. He's very good positionally in his own zone. Offensively, not too much, but he can chip in with a goal here and there. He's got an okay shot. He'll jump up into play when there's an opening. But overall, Gabberov is about defense, and that is where he excels. Now, I would have to guess that in the interest of doing your due diligence, that new Kings GM, Ken Holland, would at least explore Mitch Marner. And you have to do that before you do anything else in regards to signing other players. So that needs to be a domino that has to fall before the Kings decide to figure out what else they're going to do this offseason. I think you go after Marner, you look into it, you find out if he has any interests, and you go from there. Now, if that's not a possibility for the Kings, then you focus on re-signing Vladislav Gabberov, I believe. Now, former GM Rob Blake seemed very optimistic when asked about Gabberov as far as re-signing him in the offseason, but of course, Rob Blake is now gone. So what does Ken Holland think about re-signing Vladislav Gabberov? Well, we can only guess because he was not asked about it during his introductory press conference. My feeling is that Holland will try to re-sign Gabberov. Now, how much that's going to cost remains to be seen. This is the best chance for Vladislav Gabberov to get a big contract. He's 29 years old. He still has some solid years ahead of him. He certainly would be more attractive if he was 24 instead of pushing 30. He'll turn 30 in November. How many years Ken Holland would have to sign Gabberov for if he wants to re-sign him certainly is a question. And what would the average annual value be on his contract? Gabberov's coming off a 2-year deal where he was making $5.25 million, but no doubt he will get a nice raise from that deal. And frankly, he earned it. He'll make $7 million, $8 million next season, either from the Kings or someone else. He's one of the most attractive unrestricted free agent defensemen if he gets to market, if the Kings don't re-sign him before July 1st. So he's going to get paid one way or another. If he resigns in LA, the Kings may have to give him an 8-year deal, which would obviously be something that other teams can't give him. If you don't know, you can re-sign a player for 8 years. Other teams can only sign him for 7. So it does give a team a little bit more of a bargaining chip. You can give a player an extra year to keep him on your team. Now, an 8-year deal for a soon-to-be 30-year-old Vladislav Gabberov, it would be fine on the front end, might look a little ugly on the back end. And while in Edmonton, Ken Holland did have a signing of a defenseman that didn't go over too well. He signed Darnell Nurse to an 8-year, $74 million extension, paid him $9.25 million per season. Again, that deal was not looked upon at the time or since very favorably. Now, is that something that could affect Ken Holland wanting to give a big deal to a defenseman again? Now, granted, Darnell Nurse is younger than Vladislav Gabberov, so that doesn't work in Gabberov's favor. I don't think so. I don't think that deal will have any effect on what Ken Holland will do with Gabberov or in the future. Ken Holland has made enough deals over his career that kind of stuff probably does not stick with him. Now, in his exit interview, Vladislav Gabberov was asked about re-signing with the Kings. He said, quote, "We'll see what's going to happen in the next weeks or months. I don't have a timeline to make a decision. I'm not in a rush at all." End quote. I think that's actually good news if the Kings do in fact want to explore getting Mitch Marner, because as I said, I think that domino has to fall first before you look to do anything else, most likely. Again, my feeling is that the Kings will re-sign Gabberov. I mean, the guy was an absolute rock this season. Versatility makes him a very valuable player. I think he wants to stay here. If offered a fair contract, I think he will absolutely take it. I do think it's good for business to reward players who have played well for your organization and who deserve a raise. Gabberov fits that description. Now, if Gabberov were to decide that he wants to go elsewhere, if he doesn't like the offer that the Kings make him and he gets a better offer somewhere else, the Kings obviously then would have a hole to fill on their back end. I don't think moving Joel Edmondson, even though he played some on the second pairing this year because of the injuries to Drew Doughty, I don't know that if this team, the LA Kings, if they view themselves as being close, that you're going to want a Joel Edmondson playing on your second pairing and a Jacob Moverar moving in on the left side on the third pairing. I think the Kings would need to go out and try and get another player to add defensively. Re-signing Mitch Marner may limit your possibilities there. Is it possible? Is it possible that the Kings could sign Mitch Marner and re-sign Vladislav Gabberov? It's possible. I think it's unlikely. I think the Kings would likely have to trade some players to make that happen under the salary cap. If they want to make any other moves as well, that would likely be signing the goodbye card to Andrei Kuzmenko and Tanner Jeannot, for example. But if it's a choice between Marner or Gabberov, certainly from an age and talent standpoint, I think that's a pretty easy decision. That said, Gabberov is a known commodity. We know Vladislav Gabberov is a very good player for the LA Kings. We don't know what Mitch Marner could be as an LA King until he shows us. So there's the known and there's the unknown. But again, if the LA Kings can't land Mitch Marner, or if they don't want to go after him, then I would think that re-signing Vladislav Gabberov would be Ken Holland's number one priority this offseason. Could the LA Kings be looking to make some assistant coaching changes or hires? That is next on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's an in-game shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in on the game before tip-off and during the action. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? How could tracking their trends help you build your next big bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with the same-game parlay? Could a $200 bonus bet add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We do have some Kings news and notes to pass along. I mentioned there was some news involving the Kings draft. Apparently, with the Florida Panthers advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals over Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs, the LA Kings will now have the 24th pick in the first round of the NHL draft next month in LA. I believe that is up one spot where they were originally slated to pick. I don't know why this is the case. I investigated it. I couldn't find an explanation for it, but I saw multiple people post online after the Florida Panthers won that meant the Kings were picking 24th. They would have the 24th selection in the first round of the NHL draft. So if the Florida Panthers somehow helped the LA Kings in that regard, thank you, Florida Panthers. For the 2025 NHL draft next month, the Kings do have a first-round pick, 24th overall. They do not have a second-round pick. They shipped that out because of the trade to acquire Tanner Jeannot. The Kings do have a pick in each of the 3rd through 6th rounds and 2 7th-round picks. Now, it's unlikely that the Kings will stay in those positions where they're going to draft. Their director of amateur scouting, Mark Yannetti, loves to move back in the draft. Maybe he does something to package picks to get the LA Kings a second-round pick that they already had shipped out. We'll wait and see, but he always does some wheeling and dealing. And again, the draft is next month in LA. Next month, we will start to focus more on the NHL draft. We will start to see what are the experts saying as far as what are the players available for the LA Kings in that number 24 position in the first round. We'll talk about what are the needs of the LA Kings organizationally, as far as positions that they may be looking to bolster through this year's draft. And we'll also look at how some of the recent drafts have fared now a few years later. Did mention on the show, previous show, that Ontario Reign head coach Marco Sturm has interviewed for the vacant Boston Bruins head coaching job. Apparently, he also interviewed for the Canucks head coaching job as well. That went to Adam Foote, an assistant coach for the Canucks, who they elevated to that position. So Sturm not going to Vancouver. Apparently still has a pretty good shot at getting that Boston Bruins head coaching job. We shall see. Also, we've talked a lot about Jim Hiller, about him, should he or should he not be coming back as Kings head coach. We know he's going to be back. We haven't talked much about his assistant coaches, DJ Smith, Newell Brown, and Derek Johnson. And I frankly would have to also throw in video coach Samson Lee. Lee was likely the one who advised Hiller to challenge for goalie interference in the playoffs. Now, ultimately, that's still on Hiller. He has to make the final say on that. But you wonder, that was such a high-profile moment. Would the Kings maybe look to replace Samson Lee if they feel that there's some trust there that has been damaged because of that incident? We'll see. I don't know. But I know there's a lot of Kings fans that would not be unhappy to see Newell Brown go. He did not handle the team's power play very well during the regular season. And there's also some news about DJ Smith, who's Jim Hiller's right-hand man, who has been an assistant with him in other places in the NHL, assistants together. And DJ Smith was formerly the head coach of the Ottawa Senators. There are reports that he has interviewed for the vacant Pittsburgh Penguins head coaching job. So don't know, where he's at. I don't know. Marco Sturm apparently is a really good candidate for the Bruins. They like him. That's a possibility. Don't know about DJ Smith in Pittsburgh, but again, he did interview apparently for that job. I would say of all the Kings assistants, there's probably one that is untouchable. I would say that would be goalie coach Mike Buckley. I know Darcy Kemper sang his praises in his exit interview, and he's talked about across the league as being one of the best in the business. So I don't anticipate any assistant coaching changes for the Kings unless, of course, a DJ Smith were to get a head coaching job. That would obviously change things. But my feeling is, my prediction is that the Kings will not make any assistant coaching changes during this offseason. I think Jim Hiller was able to get the vote of confidence from the Kings organization, and I think he will pass on that confidence with his assistant coaches. Been a few days since we checked in on the 4 players in the Kings organization that are participating in the World Championships over in Sweden and Denmark. Kevin Fiala and Team Sweden posted a 3-0 win over Norway and a 10-0 win over Italy. Fiala didn't score against Norway, but he had a goal and 2 assists against Italy. He now has a goal and 4 assists, 5 points in 5 games in that tournament. Switzerland is 5-0-1 in the event. Philip Deneau went scoreless in 2 games for Canada and a 7-0 win over Slovakia and a 2-1 loss to Finland. He's got no goals, 2 assists, 2 points in 6 games for Canada, who's 5-0-1 in the World Championship so far. Ontario Reign forward Martin Kromiak went without a point in 2 games for Slovakia, a 7-0 loss to Canada, and a 5-1 loss to Latvia. He's got 1 goal, no assists for 1 point in 6 games in the tournament. He did have a shootout goal earlier. Slovakia 2-3-1 in the tournament. And Kings goalie prospect Hamson Slukinski has not dressed as the 3rd goalie for Team USA. USA went 2-0 since our last update. They beat Germany 6-3 and beat Kazakhstan 6-1. US 5-1 in the event so far. And congratulations to LA Kings prospect Jared Woolley and the London Knights. They won the Ontario Hockey League Championship in a 5-game series over the Oshawa Generals. Woolley, the Kings' 6th-round pick in 2024. He had 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points in 16 playoff games. The 6'5", 200-pound defenseman will now be with the London Knights competing for the Memorial Cup. That's starting this Friday. It's a 4-team round-robin tournament with the London Knights, the Ontario Hockey League champs, along with the Western Hockey League champs, Medicine Hat, and the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League champs, Moncton. They will all, along with the host team, Rimouski, be playing each other 3 times, and then they'll have the championship game on June 1st, and we will keep track of how Jared Woolley and the London Knights do in the Memorial Cup tournament. For you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up this week, we're going to be working on a couple of special interviews, and we'll continue our offseason look at potential free agent targets for the Kings, as well as continuing our Kings player profiles and talk about players from this past season and what their futures look like for the LA Kings. If you want to stay connected with the show, if you want to send an email for our fan feedback shows, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you're welcome to post your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section. We'd love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. And as always, go Kings, go.